Today is episode 6 with Dr. B and the first Ask Dr. B show.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, dears. So glad that you could join me today for my 6th podcast episode and the addition of another show per week on Thursdays, Ask Dr. B. You know, years ago, I used to hand out index cards in meetings that I facilitated and ask the attendees to write down whatever questions that they had for me. I would reserve the last 10 minutes or so of each meeting to answer as many questions as possible. And I realized that I've been missing knowing specific questions that people have and answering them, so I decided to add Ask Dr. B to this show. Just so you know what's coming today, the Ask Dr. B format will have no more than 3 questions per show, answered directly via stories or a blend of both, and a favorite quote of mine. So if you have questions for me, there's 2 ways that you can get them to me. Head over to my website under podcasts, and you'll see 2 options on the right side of that section, voicemail and text. Click the button that says Ask Dr. B and your preferred method of communicating, and go ahead and ask your questions. I'll be notified immediately and get to work on them for the next Thursday show. In the event that your question is outside the scope of my license, my practice, and or my knowledge base, I'm going to find a guest who can address your question and have them do so on one of the regular Monday shows. Either way, you'll get answers to the best of my ability to provide them for you. And just in case you want to know the kinds of questions that people have asked me in the past, here's a few examples. How do I tame the electronic beast? Emails, social media, and such. How do I break out of the boredom track? You know, my energy is low and I have frequent sleepiness. How important is diet, frequency of meals, types of foods, and when? Or how do you go about finding the passion and the interest to help motivation occur? Your questions matter to me. In fact, we are definitely a curious bunch and deserve to get our questions answered. I know that I certainly have had and continue to have lots and lots of questions, and I need to get them answered, or else I spin or I ruminate on them. Perhaps that's like you too. If you've been listening to any of my previous podcasts, you've heard me say that you are not what you do or don't do, that you're more than that. We are not defective or less than as people, as human beings. We're just wired differently. And the difference is actually pretty cool once you have the answers to your questions, once you understand what needs doing by you, and you have the tools to get yourself where you want to go. It's my hope that you'll get some of what you need here. Remember, I'm a work in progress just like you. I've learned a lot about how to quiet my challenges and make the most of my gifts once I got the information I needed, and I trust that you will too once you get what you need. Before I get to the questions and answers, I have a question for you. It's about your wins. You know, in the first 3 episodes, I talked a lot about wins and my little course, The Magical Power of Wins. Have you been taking the time to look for your wins, to notice them, to celebrate them, to share them with others who appreciate what a big deal they are for you, and to celebrate with you? You know, I sure hope so, because there is truly magic in all of this. And just in case you've forgotten what I mean by wins, they are those little things that happen every single day that are good things, positive things in the bigger picture of your life, and yet they go unnoticed, unacknowledged, and uncelebrated by you. You know, it takes shifting your mindset, and it's totally worth it. Please don't be the person that continues to tell yourself that it's pointless for you to reward yourself for the necessities of life, what's expected of you. That couldn't be further from the truth. Those are the very things that deserve to be celebrated so that it becomes easier to do them consistently and more enjoyable each and every time that you do. So if you got yourself out of bed this morning, it's a win. If you said hello to a stranger or smiled at them, it's a win. If they responded with a smile or a hello back, it's another win. If you needed to get your laundry done and you did it, that's a win. If your trash cans needed to go out today and you put them out, it's a win. You get the point. Celebrate all of them. And none of this half-hearted celebrating. Mean it. Exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. And certainly celebrate the big wins too. It's just that they happen so much less often. So celebrating daily wins makes a difference faster in your life because of the frequency. Shifting gears now. Today's episode is all about answering the questions that you have about issues or challenges that you experience as an adult living with ADHD and offering you hope. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. Thanks to you, my listeners, for today's questions on these three topics: codependency and ADHD, needing versus wanting relationships with people, and becoming more organized versus hiring a virtual assistant.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, great free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why you have the questions that you do. It's possible that you have lots of misinformation, or you're missing steps, or strategies, or a philosophy, or an understanding of yourself well enough to make good decisions on your behalf. Everyone's reasons are different, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to answer what I can for you. I'm going to share each question with you, share a little about the topic, offer my point of view about what I hear within the question, and my response to each question, which includes an action step to take. Yes, there is an action step for each question, because just hearing an answer isn't enough. You need to take action or nothing changes. So don't let yourself off the hook. You do have the ability to respond to your needs. And I hope that at least one of these topics or questions will resonate with each and every one of you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. Thank you to Sarah in California for the first topic of codependency and ADHD. Sarah asks, I have adult ADHD, but feel like codependency has had such a big effect in my life. I still make airhead mistakes so often. I feel like I have to maintain all my relationships well because these people help me out when I mess up, like a boss covering for me when I got my schedule confused, or a neighbor helping me out for an hour when I locked myself out due to forgetting my keys and my phone. Also, when I start really focusing on improving my issues and myself, sometimes I forget about reaching out socially. I guess it must be a balance, trying to keep my ducks in a row, but also maintain my social relationships in a way that's authentic for me. So first, thanks, Sarah, for being my very first listener to submit a question. ADHD and codependency could be its own show, and it probably will be in the future. You know, the short version about codependency as it relates to ADHD for today's show is that from years and years of feeling like an outsider or an outcast or less than or a loser or whatever negative scripts or negative narrative is running in the heads of many adults with ADHD, there is the risk of slipping into or adopting codependent behaviors such as people-pleasing as a means of gaining acceptance. You know, employers love employees with codependent behavior patterns because they're willing to work longer hours and work harder than the non-codependent employees. The need to prove worth and value is a huge driver here. I love the simple definition I heard years ago. The codependency is an absence of a healthy relationship with self in which you are consciously willing to sacrifice your own needs in order to meet the needs of others. This doesn't mean that you're to ignore others' needs, just that you need to pay attention to meeting your own needs first and not throw yourself under the bus, so to speak. It's kind of like the drill that they do on airplanes about oxygen masks. Put yours on first and then help others. That said, working on your relationship with yourself is very important to the health of other relationships that you enter. In the context of codependency, I'd like to reflect on a few things that I hear in your first question. And mind you, I have no attachment to being right here, just what occurs to me. And I stand corrected if I'm off base. One of the things that I hear is self-judgment, not self-love, with the comment about airhead mistakes. The other is others have helped you, so you owe them, like your neighbor and your boss. Now to your question. It sounds like you're trying to juggle a lot and maintain your social relationships in a way that's authentic to you. Where I suggest that you start is by defining what is authentic to you. You need that information first before you can adjust your social relationships to match your authenticity. And once you know what is authentically you and you begin living and relating that way, there's this inner knowing that seems to emerge, at least it did for me, about being in right relationship with others. And I trust that that will be true for you as well. Transitioning to our next question. Thanks again to Sarah in California for the second topic of needing versus wanting relationships with others. Sarah asks, I know you mentioned one time about healthy relationships being about wanting to be around the other person instead of needing to. So I guess by learning to manage my own life better, I'll have less need in my life towards people and get to reach out just out of pure interest. I guess the struggle is remembering both, because sometimes I get laser focused and to make progress, feel like I have to hyper-focus on just one thing. Thanks so much for your second question, Sarah. Needing, in my experience, is connected to codependent behavioral patterns. Those who are codependent have a need to be needed. That's where their sense of value of self comes from. If you can't find people who need you for something, then you have no value. This is more like the human doing rather than the human being that I've talked about before. However, if the basis of these relationships is born out of codependent thinking and behaviors, then it's possible that the relationship can develop in an unhealthy way, with the motivation coming from a place of need instead of preference, which can lead to clinging to people, which can feel like smothering as an experience for the other person. In the context of needing versus wanting relationships with others, I'd like to reflect a few things I hear in your second question. And mind you, again, I have no attachment to being right here either, just what occurs to me, and I stand corrected if I'm off base. Black and white thinking, all or nothing, need or don't need, want or don't want. There's no gray here for preferences for you. And better life management leads to not needing others. This could lead someone to not wanting to manage their life better, as certain people would be gone. Now to your question. It sounds like you're trying to sort out what it is to need someone versus want someone around you, and that once you have your life managed better, that you won't need someone around. This definitely might be true, that you won't need them around. However, that doesn't mean that you won't want them around because you enjoy their company and their friendship, that you prefer to spend time with them rather than with other people because you enjoy these people. And yes, having people in your life just because you enjoy them is awesome. And if you remove any expectations of what people are supposed to do for you and just enjoy them for who they are, there is certainly something to be gained, provided that they're people that you want in your life because you have common interests, common values, and other important criteria that's a good fit. Transitioning to our next question. Thank you to Lisa in Great Britain for the third topic of today, getting more organized versus hiring a virtual assistant. Lisa asks, I'm interested in learning more about how strategies to deal with being so disorganized. For example, would hiring a virtual assistant help? Or do you think there are strategies that I can put in place so that I myself can become more organized? So far, I have completely failed at this. Thanks so much for your question, Lisa. So I'm going to approach your question from the point of being disorganized and what can be done so I can unpack this topic a little. Most people I've worked with who say that they're disorganized tend to have at least one place in their life where they are, in fact, organized, rather than being disorganized in every single area of their life without exception. An example would be if you cook and you have a well-organized kitchen where everything has a place or a home and returns to that home easily. That organizing your kitchen felt organic and easy to do. It wasn't a struggle at all. Or another example might be that you're a DJ who has hundreds of records or discs, and they're all well organized into categories of music or mood or themes, or however it makes sense to you, and that it's easy for you to do that. Might even say, well, it's common sense. In the context of delegating or learning and doing yourself, I'd like to reflect a few things that I hear in your question. And again, mind you, I have no attachment to being right here either, just what occurs to me, and I stand corrected if I'm off base. I hear black and white thinking, where it is that you're talking about learn and do it yourself, or hire a virtual assistant and delegate to them. There's no gray here. And that whatever strategies you've put in place so far have failed you, rather than you having failed. They just weren't the right strategies for you. Now to your question. Since I don't know what you've done thus far to learn to get organized or stay organized, or what specific areas of your life that you're referring to, it's hard to give a definitive answer. Perhaps the decision can be viewed this way. First, are you aware of what areas of your life are well organized, or at least better organized? And if so, do you know why that's so? And have you ever used the model of where you are organized for the areas of your life that aren't, and see how they work in those areas as well? And as for the question of should you learn to be organized or should you hire a virtual assistant, I think the better question is, do you want to learn organizational strategies to do yourself, or do you want to delegate organizational duties to a virtual assistant? Also, you could learn organizational strategies for only some areas of your life and not others, and delegate those other areas to a virtual assistant. Instead of getting locked into black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking, consider various options of the situation first. That's it for our 3 questions for today. I want to thank Sarah and Lisa again for sending in their questions to help launch this format of the show for Thursdays, Ask Dr. B. It's my hope that many more of you will send me your questions by voice message or text so I can address them on the upcoming show. Here's a favorite quote for today. Claudia Black said, "Your needs are important. Knowing your needs is the first step in getting them met." The question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, what are your needs? And do you know which ones are negotiable and which ones are not? I appreciate you showing up to listen today and in the future. New episodes will be available twice a week now, on Mondays at 6 a.m. Pacific Time, where I'll be talking about such compelling topics as analysis paralysis, managing yourself within time, making friends, and more hot topics, as well as lining up guests to bring more great insights to you. And on Thursdays at 6 a.m. for Ask Dr. B, where the questions that you submit to me will be answered to the best of my ability. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and keep coming back. In fact, if you receive value today, please rate the show and write a thoughtful review on iTunes so that I know I'm meeting your needs. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little better every time that we get together. Remember to subscribe so you receive every new episode as soon as it's available. And then be sure to get over to my website to get your show notes and learn about other services. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.